Those Who Walk Away is a 2022 horror film directed by Robert Ripberger, starring Boo Boo Stewart and Scarlett Sperduto, I believe is how you say her last name. Guys, I will probably be spoiling the movie in this review, so if you haven't seen it, go ahead, go watch it, come on back. But before you do that, just a fair warning, they've got a disclaimer at the beginning of the movie that says the flashing lights may possibly trigger seizures. They say something along those lines. They're not lying. There was some times in this movie where I felt kind of dizzy, felt nauseous from all the strobe lights. So if you're a candidate for like epileptic seizures or anything along like those lines, this may be a movie you should avoid. Now, proceeding into this review, Act 1, guys. Act 1 was a drag. I personally didn't like the acting chops of the lead. It made the whole thing just kind of drag for me. The movie, it starts with a phone call that just kind of seems to go on forever. No destination in sight, basically. And it leads into a date with the two leads, which would be Max and Avery. That just didn't seem like it was going to end. We basically followed them throughout their entire date. I know when a script reader reads a script, if you don't hook that reader within the first 5 to 10 pages or so, they'll toss it aside and just move it on to the next script. If I was reading a screenplay, it would take a good 40 minutes to get to something decent in this. Most script readers would have just tossed this script to the side just because of how much they ask of you for Act 1 as they try to build into Act 2. I just kept saying to myself while I'm watching this movie better go somewhere with all this because they sure as shit are asking a lot out of me right now. It didn't help that, the dialogue itself felt wooden, the characters were uninteresting, that just wasn't good enough characters to grab onto you for 40 minutes straight. It asked a whole lot out of you, and I don't know, it took forever to get into Act 2 for me. They needed to actually lead with something a little bit better. Maybe show, without actually showing Avery as being the person that's leading these people to this house, but just show somebody taking the kid, maybe a shadow taking the kid and locking him up in this house or something, maybe getting even a glimpse of this Rock Creep character. But we start with a phone call leading into a date before we even get into anything relatively interesting in the movie at all. What we get in this movie is only a few minutes of this Rock Creep character. They speak a lot about it, but they really only give it a couple minutes of screen time. The Rock Creep character, he looks a lot like Twisty the Clown from American Horror Story. I understand low budget constraints, I really do. I can forgive a lot of low budget movies. They do the best they can with the budget that they've got. It's very obvious Rock Creep was a man in a mask. You could almost see the seams of the mask. And the little bits of time that we get him, like 2 minutes of screen time, you could just tell. And there wasn't a whole lot put into this guy's look, which is probably a reason why they didn't have as much screen time for him, because they knew if they overexposed it, we would see all of the flaws with that character. But like I said, I understand the budget constraints. The film did have Max and Avery buy a bottle of booze from the bar in Act 1, so they probably blew their budget at the bar. I don't like movies that promise these cool characters or cool villains, and they either don't deliver, or when they do deliver, it's only for a few minutes. I've seen so many low-budget horror movies being guilty of this. It's a lot of tell, not show, I guess, would be with these horror movies. The star of the movie, though, is actually somebody that wasn't on the screen. The star of the movie was actually the cameraman, I thought. Some of the camera work is absolutely fantastic in this. These characters are not roaming around a mansion hiding from this monster. It's actually a small house, which could make a lot of these shots a lot more difficult to shoot, I'm sure. I'm not a cameraman, but I can imagine working in a smaller environment's got to be a lot trickier than an open floor plan. And they've got some interesting shots. The camera goes upside down at points, which the way the film is, filmed, it's very disorienting at times. It's a very disorienting experience, which I actually thought added to the experience. Now, I mentioned something earlier about all the flashing strobes and how they actually did have a disclaimer for those that were prone to seizures. There is one scene in particular, I believe it's the scene with the mirrors. I actually had to look away from the screen for a little bit because it was actually making me dizzy. It was making me feel a little bit nauseous. And this is a film you don't want to mix with vodka. I learned that last night. But I do. I liked how the movie was shot. I liked where they were going with it, with the camera work. It's just a storyline, the characters that just kind of made it fall a little flat. I said a lot of the bad things about this movie, but it is not actually a waste of time. Yes, I do wish they did more of the premise. Yes, I do wish they showed more of Rock Creep. But it's not a bad time by any means. By the year-end list, this is not going to be anywhere near the top, but it may actually end up being towards the bottom. I guarantee I'm going to be watching a lot shittier movies this year. So, but this one it's relatively inoffensive. It's just not spectacular by any means. So, go check it out. Just keep your expectations low with it. So guys, this is my first standalone review for a film. Obviously, if you look at my channel, I ranked January's horror movies that I watched and February's as well. Did a franchise ranking with a Leprechaun series. This is the first time I've actually kind of just went into a single movie. I probably should have chose a better movie to start with, something a little bit more to talk about. But hey, if you came across this video, if you liked it, go ahead and hit that like button. Go ahead and also hit that subscribe button. I'm going to keep this channel very active. There's going to be a lot of videos upcoming here in the next couple weeks. I've got a Nightmare on Elm Street franchise review, a Texas Chainsaw Massacre review. Of course, now we're almost at the end of March, so I'll be listing all the horror movies I watched this month and ranking them down. So there is a lot of content coming up. So if you want to keep up with it, if you want to see this channel grow and hopefully me improve as a YouTuber, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. But guys, thanks for stopping by. We'll see y'all next time.